Alcatraz Island rises abruptly from the cold waters of San Francisco Bay. Formerly a military fortress, Alcatraz became America's most notorious maximum security prison, housing such incorrigibles as Al Capone and Babyface Nelson. No prisoner ever escaped from Alcatraz alive. When it closed in 1963, the spirits of some may have remained behind, forever imprisoned within its massive walls.
I've heard that the hallway directly behind me, Broadway, is haunted, and that if you sleep on the cells, you'll hear the cell doors opening and closing all night long, and that they actually move. Well, I didn't believe it. One night I spend the night, I sleep on Broadway. All night long I heard the mechanism that would operate the cell door. And one security guard told us that he was patrolling. He's the only one on the island. He had gone down a flight of stairs into the shower room. He got to the bottom, he stopped, and then he felt this hand touch him on the back of the neck. Jumped, panicked, looked around. Nobody was there. We would have fun greeting him for the next couple of weeks. You walk up behind him quietly and put a hand on him, and hair would go straight up.
Cell Block D held the prison hospital and served as an isolation unit for prisoners like the Birdman of Alcatraz, Robert Stroud, whose cell, many say, is haunted.
There have been ghosts seen, there have been mediums that have been up in the hospital and had seances and heard voices, had the presence of a spirit. There is also hydrotherapy, a room where they put people into the bathtubs. Prisoners, if they became emotionally upset, would be put on a table, cold towels wrapped around them, and put basically into a trance.
No prisoner was ever executed at Alcatraz, though there were 8 murders and 5 suicides. Still, unexplained events continue to take place.
I know several people who refuse to be out here after dark because the voices start talking to them. I've never seen any ghosts out here, but there are nights that I've walked down the hallway and you almost hear prisoners in their cell brushing their teeth, combing their hair, the squeaking of the beds, those type sounds, even when there's nobody here but me just walking around.
How and why does a place become haunted? And if ghosts exist, why? These questions have been asked, but never answered.
The reality is that they are around us all the time. There are a number of theories of why we have ghosts. The most practical one, I suppose, is people that the desire is so great within them that they have to keep coming back to where they existed, or there's some great emotional pullback and they cannot totally accept the fact that they've left the physical body.
In San Jose, California, visiting ghosts must navigate through a Victorian mansion built according to blueprints received from the spirit world. In the Winchester house, unwanted ghosts travel at their own risk. Twisting corridors, a maze of stairways, and doors to nowhere were designed to confuse evil spirits. Do the spirits of the night still visit? Employees report ghostly visages and other unexplained phenomena.
The first time I was actually alone in the house, I wandered off into one of the closed-off rooms. I guess it was one of the servants' bedrooms, and I let the door close behind me, and it felt that the air pressure got really heavy in there, and it felt like the walls were getting closer, and I had to get out of that room really quickly. A lot of people have claimed to see lights in that room, and there's no electricity in the room at all. And I hear, footsteps and creaking boards and whisperings whenever I'm cleaning in the house or whenever I close in the house, and there's nobody in the house when we're closing it.
The mansion was built by Sarah Winchester, heir to the Winchester firearms fortune.
William Winchester.
William.
when a Boston medium informed Sarah that the deaths of her husband and only child were brought about by evil spirits slain by Winchester rifles, she was advised to head west. In California, Sarah transformed a simple farmhouse into a mansion for the spirit world. Here, she was safe. For as long as Sarah kept building, she would be protected from vengeful spirits. For 38 years, 24 hours a day, construction continued, even after losing 3 stories to the San Francisco earthquake in 1906. Today, the house sprawls over 6 acres of landscaped grounds. It contains 160 rooms, 47 fireplaces, 13 bathrooms, 52 skylights, and nearly 10,000 windows. Tiffany glass, rare woods, and other building materials of the highest quality were used extensively, adding to building costs that totaled nearly $5.5 million when construction ended after Sarah's death in 1922. Midnight until 2 a.m. were the ghosting hours at the Winchester house. During this time, Sarah contacted the spirit world for guidance.
We've had some seances in the past where we've had different psychics come in and conduct a seance to see if they could raise the spirits of either Sarah Winchester or anybody else who was involved in the construction of the house. And we've had a couple of psychics say that there are spirits in the house, 3 spirits to be exact.
There was a seance held a few years back inside the Daisy bedroom, and from what I've heard, a woman named Antoinette May and another man were staying alone in the house that night. And about late in the evening, the woman started to hear organ music coming from outside of the Daisy bedroom where they were staying. Well, the man didn't hear it. That is until he opened the door to the Daisy bedroom. And when he opened the door, he could hear it, only she couldn't hear it anymore. They closed the door for good, and that apparently disgruntled the spirits, as the next thing you knew, the floor was shaking very violently in the Daisy bedroom. The next morning, there were no reports of an earthquake, but there were 2 broken keys on the pipe organ down here in the grand ballroom.
Some believe Sarah Winchester still haunts the house.
The tour guide had said he came into the room where Mrs. Winchester died, and he noticed there was an indent in a pillow. And he fluffed the pillow back up, and he came back a little while later with the tour, and the indent was back in the pillow.
For Sarah, the Blue Room was the soul of the mansion. Here she made contact with the spirit world. No one ever entered the room while Sarah lived. Some believe it's still a doorway for visitors from another dimension.
So what I'll do is go up and get a primer and...
we were coming to work and we were talking about what we were going to be doing. Skylight. And I turned around and looked down the hallway and I seen a man standing there. And then he disappeared. We went down to see if somebody was in the house, and there was nobody there. I never believed in spirits or ghosts or anything.
Yeah,
so,
I didn't either.
But I do have a belief now that there is something in this house.
America's landscape is dotted with haunted places. One of the most famous hauntings occurred in 1848 in a small wood frame house in Hydesville, New York. 2 sisters, Margaret and Catherine Fox, began communicating with an unseen spirit. Their communication so captured the public's imagination that within a few years, spiritual congregations were springing up across the country. On the banks of Cassadaga Lake, near Jamestown, New York, a group purchased property to build a spiritual community, christened the City of Light. Today it is known as the Lilydale Assembly, one of the largest communities of spiritualists and mediums in the world.
Spiritualism is the science, philosophy, and religion of continuing life. Spiritualists believe that there is no death. There are only different ways of living. Sometimes I see them so clearly that they look like flesh people to me.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon.
if I touch with someone who's had a message, please let me know, because we like to read this message.
We also believe that there is communication between the physical expression of life and the spiritual expression of life. And this is where the mediumship part of spiritualism comes in.
Is this father, please? Grandfather? Grandfather. Thank you, because he comes in so strongly with you.
What happens is that we are able to communicate with people who have passed on. Actually, we don't communicate with them, they communicate with us.
I'm a clairvoyant, which is technically clear seeing.
Readings before?
Never had a reading.
When I do a reading, I kind of step out of my body a little bit, just kind of go out of phase with it. And I send out a thought for the people that this person wishes to communicate with. When people touch in from spirit, and when I say spirit, I mean someone who has died, they identify themselves. Sometimes it's a name, it might be a relationship, it might be the way they died. I never know what's going to come through. It might even be a last name of Stevens. I didn't hear it very clearly.
We believe that everyone has the capacity to tune into spirit. Most people don't seem to choose to use it. I have never walked into any building where I couldn't sense some spirit activity. Spirits are everywhere.
Far to the south of Lilydale, New York, the waters of the Mississippi arrive at a city with a soul and character all its own. New Orleans is a place where time seems to stand still, where the past mixes with the present, the living with the dead. Voodoo arrived with slaves from Africa and the Caribbean. Today it is practiced much as it was then, with rituals and ceremonies to call forth the spirits of the dead. A frequent guest is the spirit of Marie Laveau, the feared and respected queen of voodoo. Marie was said to be over 100 years old when she died, and as beautiful as ever. Today, her grave has become a shrine to her many followers, who pay homage by leaving small gifts and strange markings on her tombstone. New Orleans' past is full of ghostly legends. Located in the French Quarter is one of the nation's first pharmacies. But legend has it that in other parts of the building, a doctor practiced a more gruesome form of medicine, performing medical experiments on human subjects. Strange noises and ghostly apparitions are said to be those of his victims. A few blocks away was the 19th century home of Madame Lalaurie, a prominent and respected socialite, until workmen discovered a hidden upstairs room where she tortured chained slaves. Her dark secret exposed, she was forced to flee the city, leaving behind only the ghosts of her victims, who still haunt the property. But stories and legends don't explain New Orleans' present-day hauntings. Employees at Maxwell's, a jazz club in the heart of the French Quarter, have seen two ghosts. One, a jazz musician. The other, a doorman, supposedly killed in the club when it was a mafia hangout.
Good evening. Welcome.
It was late at night and I was cleaning up and everything, and something caught my eye, and I look up here to the balcony, and for about 2 seconds, there was this guy standing there. Looked Italian, his hair slicked straight back, what looked like kind of like a tuxedo or some kind of evening wear on, and he was just looking at me and like smiling, and then he was gone.
Is he the ghost of a mafia soldier returning to the place of his death? The Southern Nights Bed and Breakfast, the site of a series of paranormal occurrences.
There were such strange things that went on when I first bought the house. I would hear sounds and whispers and voices. My housekeeper, my son, would come to me and say, "Did you call me?" And I hadn't.
When we first moved in here, that's when I first started to notice the first
strange occurrences. A few times when I walked in different rooms, the hair would stand up on the back of my neck as if someone was in the room with me. When I look around, no one's there. I discount it as something, maybe it's just in my imagination.
It's a sense that somebody is there, an overwhelming sense that you're not alone in a room. The cold spots, the cold places where it's just cold around you, you can feel it. I always felt something very strange when I would go through the dining room. It was like the air was heavier here than it was in the other parts of the house. It was like I couldn't breathe.
A few other times we had mainly mechanical and electrical phenomena. Lights would turn on. Alarm clocks that would set off when I had made sure that all the alarm clocks were disconnected. Doors locked themselves. Doors which I had just opened just a few minutes earlier and no one else was up there with me.
And then I started having these experiences with my guests who would tell me these incredible stories.
To better understand the strange occurrences, Judy contacted Larry Motz, a parapsychologist and paranormal investigator.
Our actual organization is the International Society for Paranormal Research, and we have what we call Hauntings Today investigations and ghost expeditions. We conduct scientific investigations of phenomena and try to determine, using scientific methods, what's going on.
Larry sent a staff member to investigate the haunting.
And I said, why don't you go around and look at everything, check out all the rooms. So when she came back, she said, do you know you have an entity in the house? I never thought about it, but then all of a sudden it really made sense. I think this is very definitely a haunted house.
Is go ahead and we'll start here and then proceed through each floor as we go.
Our particular organization is a little unique in the fact that we use a combination of scientists as well as psychic investigators.
When we get in the building, you just kind of start sensing what you feel. And then
we use equipment like cameras, thermal radiation, ultrasound, magnetometers for electromagnetic energy fields. Any device that we feel can maybe detect some type of phenomena. We have conducted numerous investigations in haunted hotels, just like the Bourbon Orleans Hotel here in the French Quarter in New Orleans.
There have been people walking by this particular guest room suite and have heard a little girl crying. Hotel managers proceed to go up there, knock on the door, no answer, walk in, no one's there.
The cook that used to work in the kitchen would be working at night, especially the third floor. He said you'd hear voices at night, people talking, things going across the room. He actually the lights went out one night and got slapped across the face and left a handprint on his face. He left and did not come back.
We talked about doing an investigation, and it was very much encouraged by the hotel, and that was when the people from Hauntings Today decided to come in and do the investigation.
When we first entered the property, of course, the psychic said that they were definitely feeling energy that was a little unusual as we walked in.
I get energy's impression up here, and mostly coming from it.
The psychic investigators that we use, what they do is they actually give us additional information in a site. Scientifically, we can go in and detect at times different types of phenomena that might be occurring, but we can't tell you who the entity is or what's going on or what the entity looks like and so on, where the psychic investigative team has that ability.
I get the impression that this staircase is older, probably original to the building, this one.
As we proceeded to the ballroom area, we were able to get a number of unusual electromagnetic energy readings, as well as cold spots, which are pretty common to a haunting. And we also experienced some poltergeist activity with one of the chandeliers that actually started to move. Yeah, do you feel that? Let's get a temperature reading.
The paranormal phenomena may be related to the hotel's rich and varied past. At different times, it was the home of St. Mary's Academy, St. John's Orphanage, and the famous Orleans Ballroom.
Psychically, one of the team members actually saw residual images of dances and balls that had taken place there in the past.
My information comes a lot of different ways. Sometimes I hear words, sometimes I'll feel emotions. Also, I use what's called the third eye, so a lot of times when I'm doing investigations, you'll see me with my eyes closed. What I'm doing is I'm kind of scouting the area for different energy and disruptions. Okay, I feel like there's somebody watching us, somebody behind us this way. Okay, get shots of that.
gone.
But we were able to actually locate several entities in this particular property on the investigation. One was a Confederate soldier and officer that did appear to us in a hallway.
You see that image down the hallway around the corner?
Yeah, and we kind of chased down the hallway, but weren't able to find him after that.
Others have also seen ghostly entities.
Doing turn down, which is turning the rooms down at night. They give you a list of vacant and rooms that you need to turn down. When you close the curtains at night, you look across the courtyard, and I saw a nun sitting in a window in a vacant room crying.
At first we had gotten kind of an impression, or a psychic impression, of a person standing all the way at the end of the hallway. And as we approached it, this nun appeared. And she turned quickly and moved through one of the doors of the room. And as we entered the room, of course, she disappeared.
If the psychic impressions and magnetic readings are indications of unknown spirits, a night at the Bourbon Orleans may be a little more than a guest bargains for.
There is very good evidence which suggests that most individuals do seem capable of picking up information without using their senses, what we call extrasensory perception. Now, that's rather different, however, than experiencing ghosts, although people who do have this sensitivity may in some way, pick up on things in locations that other people do not.
The Rhine Research Center in Durham, North Carolina, has been on the cutting edge of paranormal research thanks to J.B. and Louisa Rhine. They took paranormal research out of the seance room and brought it into the science laboratory.
We still continue to look at those kind of extraordinary human abilities that we call extrasensory perception, and also, to a lesser degree, psychokinesis. Now, the ESP we're looking at through one technique is called the Gansfeld, and it involves putting him or her into a rather mild state of sensory isolation, and we do that by putting ping pong balls over the eyes and putting headphones delivering white noise to the ears. The goal of this is to try to induce a sort of hypnotic or sleep-like state. And then they're asked to describe whatever thoughts and images are coming into their mind. Now, in another room, isolated, somebody will be looking at a picture and trying to communicate it to their partner in the other room.
Well, it's not a clear image. It seems foggy.
While the Gansfeld may be the tool to open the doors to the understanding of ESP, the detection of ghosts and hauntings is more complicated.
There's no real evidence that any individual can dial up a ghost and communicate with it. Despite Ghostbusters and X-Files, there are no simple gadgets that will detect ghosts.
But ordinary cameras have picked up some rather unusual images. Are these photographic tricks, imperfections in the processing, or concrete evidence of the existence of visitors from the world beyond? Our nation's capital has experienced more than its share of hauntings and paranormal phenomena.
One of the reasons Washington is so fascinating as a haunted city is not only because of all the power that's been involved, past and present, and the forces, if you will, but also the people who have verified these sightings. Presidents and first ladies have seen ghosts, congressmen and senators. The most dramatic case was Her Imperial Majesty Queen Wilhelmina of the Netherlands. She was visiting the president, and she was put in the Lincoln bedroom. Very, very late at night, she heard a knocking at the door, and there stood Abraham Lincoln.
A few blocks from the White House is the Octagon House, a building dating back to the 1700s. Here, legends abound of unusual occurrences and visitors from the dead.
The Octagon is a National Historic Landmark and one of the premier buildings in the history of Washington, D.C. It was built by Colonel John Taylor III, who did so at the insistence of his friend George Washington, who wanted to see something developing here in this land that had nothing in it at that particular time.
We have a ghost file, as we call it, and we keep all the documentation that we can find on any ghost stories that have been told. One of the most fascinating ones relates to a daughter of the Talos, supposedly, who, in a fit of melancholy that she would never be able to marry her lover, she threw herself over the stair.
There are a lot of stories about the stairway. A very well-known architectural photographer. He was on the upper landing in the octagon trying to get his camera set to do a shot, and he felt as though he was being pushed over the railing.
The octagon served as a temporary White House during the War of 1812. Today, visitors report seeing the visage of First Lady Dolly Madison and smelling the scent of her lilac perfume. Some have heard sounds attributed to a murdered slave whose body was found buried in an interior wall. Others have witnessed the sudden, unexplained swinging of the staircase chandelier.
So there have been a lot of experiences that have had something to say about the fact that maybe others do occupy this building that we don't know about.
Even the U.S. Capitol is believed to be haunted.
When President Garfield was assassinated, it was after a long and spectacular trial of the assassin Charles Guiteau. And a guard going through the rotunda suddenly thought he saw Guiteau walking through there, and he gave chase. And suddenly he stopped and realized, wait a minute, Guiteau was executed last week, and the ghost disappeared.
The most haunted room in the Capitol is said to be Statuary Hall, once the chamber of the House of Representatives. Visitors report hearing the voice of John Quincy Adams passionately debating the issues of the day. And former guards claim that late one night, the statues came to life and danced a ghostly minuet. But the most alarming story is of a demonic cat who appears in the sub-basement of the Capitol near the tomb built for George Washington. The cat's appearance has foreshadowed national tragedies like the death of FDR in 1945 and the assassination of John F. Kennedy in 1963. History books describe John Bell's 19th century Tennessee farm as a battleground between good and evil. The place where a malevolent spirit began her centuries-old torment of the Bell family. Known as the Bell Witch, she was said to be Kate Batts, a spurned lover, jealous of John Bell's wife and family. The witch's reign of terror began with the appearance of a demon-like creature at the farm. Soon afterwards, a mysterious presence descended upon the Bell home. The presence soon turned violent. Bell's daughter, Elizabeth, was a favorite target. Her hair was pulled and her face bruised by the evil presence.
And the Lord spoke to the unclean spirits in the body of the woman and said, "Be thou gone!"
The family appealed to their minister, who attempted to exorcise the evil spirit.
Let us pray.
John Bell was mercilessly beaten and tormented by his unseen foe. 3 years after Kate's first appearance, John Bell fell into a coma. It was said the Bell Witch had slipped poison into his medication.
Oh, I walk in the valley of the shadow of death.
He died on December 21st, 1820. Mourners heard the witch's laugh as he was lowered into his grave. Today, the Bell farm is gone, but reports of a dark-haired apparition, mysterious lights, and ungodly sounds suggest that the Bell Witch may still haunt the site. Demonic forces are also blamed for the murders committed by Robert DeFeo, now serving a life term in prison for his crimes. DeFeo began his journey through the gates of hell in November of 1974, when he murdered his entire family as they slept. Today, the murders are all but forgotten, as novelists and scriptwriters have taken over, creating a series of books and films about a haunted house, the Amityville Horror. But is that where the story ends?
Without question, the Amityville Horror House is one of the greatest hoax stories and one of the greatest haunted house stories this country has ever known, if not the greatest. Absolutely.
This was concocted by a novelist, Jay Anson, and the Lutz family, who bought the house, lived there for 31 days, ran out screaming some stormy night, they said, and then went on to write a best-selling book.
DeFeo and his lawyers claimed he was driven by demonic voices to commit the murders. And while no one doubts that DeFeo was the murderer, what about the claims of demonic possession and the subsequent hauntings?
Now, how do you still believe something happened after the principals tell you, no, we made it up? But still, people want to believe it because it does capture your imagination, that in this beautiful house, some of the most bizarre things go on, and that appeals to our darkest fears.
Others demand more objective proof. The Center for Inquiry is home to the Committee for the Scientific Investigation of the Paranormal, CSICOP, an organization dedicated to finding the truth behind paranormal activities.
CSICOP was founded in 1976, and the reason why it was founded was to bring together scientists, skeptics, academics to look into the many, many paranormal claims. And they're across the board: afterlife, poltergeists, ghostly hauntings, UFOs, and to try to find objective explanations. We founded the journal, the Skeptical Inquirer, and the Skeptical Inquirer is the leading journal reporting on our investigations.
And to Minnesota goes.
We try to look into whatever mysteries we can. Obviously, we can't parachute into Peoria every time Mrs. Smith thinks she has a ghost, or every time someone sees a flying saucer somewhere. But we do try to hit the bigger cases, and we do investigate paranormal claims.
So yeah, with our pack and ship service.
Sheltered by towering redwoods, Brookdale Lodge lies just south of San Francisco. Once one of the West Coast's premier resorts, the rustic setting and mountain air attracted Hollywood stars and other celebrities. To the sound of cascading water, guests dined and danced the night away in the Brook Room, a football field-sized room built over the waters of Clear Creek. Brookdale Lodge has had its share of trouble. A fire, flood, and the tragic drowning of the daughter of a former owner have left their indelible mark on the hotel. Perhaps they're why so many guests and employees are convinced it's haunted.
Elon and I were cleaning up, getting ready to go, and I had heard some faint music, and I stopped and I said, Elon, do you hear that? And he said, yeah, I do.
It was a mixture of people talking in the background and music, old-time music.
And we thought someone had broken in and was just having an after-hours party. So we got the keys and we were going to go in there and kick everybody out. And we opened up the doors and everything just seized. Nothing.
We didn't know what it was. Still don't know what it is. It was scary a little bit.
And I was picking up tables, cocktail glasses off of tables, cleaning the place up. And this ghost appeared and she just glided across the floor. And I just picked up those glasses as quick as I could and tried to get out of here.
Guests and employees have reported another haunting, that of a mother and her young daughter in the Brook Room. Are they ghostly specters reliving an earlier tragedy?
It was about midnight and I was closing up, making everything was sure everything was secure, and I heard a little girl. I said, oh no, a little girl must be locked in here. So I went into the mermaid room and I opened up the doors and I saw an image of a little girl with braids. She had blonde hair. She looked about 7 years old. And the closer I got, the image disappeared. And so I was so certain that there was a little girl in there. I searched the whole place. I looked under tables, everything, and there was nobody in there.
To help explain the mysterious occurrences, Joe Nichols from the Center for Inquiry was contacted to investigate the property.
I think the first thing that one tries to do with a haunted house is to gather data and see whether there is evidence, first of all, for some kind of hoax. Brookdale struck me right away as not having the characteristics of overt hoaxing or prankery.
This is where it all comes down to, the Brookdale.
Another type of case would be where something real is being misperceived. You've seen something here or had some experience?
Yes.
And so I proceeded to see if I might find some plausible explanations for some of those phenomena. And I also gave them a questionnaire that is used to measure their perceptive ability, their imagination, and so forth.
Also investigating the haunting is Lloyd Auerbach, a San Francisco parapsychologist. His team will work with professional psychic Annette Martin in uncovering the ghostly secrets of the Brookdale Lodge.
In the field of parapsychology, we look at interactions of the human mind, living or dead, if you want to look at it that way, with other minds, with the environment. The idea that the human mind can receive information from the environment or from other people, or the idea that the human consciousness or spirit survives the death of the body and somehow can cause some sort of impact on the environment. I work with things like using a magnetometer because geomagnetic fields, magnetic fields of the Earth, had in fact shown a correlation to people's ESP and psychokinetic experiences. I also tend to use people I trust who call themselves psychics or sensitives.
Everyone has an electromagnetic field around their body, and I have the capability of being able to read that. Immediately when I came in, I saw a young girl. And I asked her her name, and she was very shy and very demure and didn't want to give me her name, but she said that she liked to be called Katie. And she followed me around quite a bit while we were looking to see all the different energies. I was quite surprised. Suddenly I felt this pull on my jacket. I just felt the presence of the little girl again. Behind me is like she's following behind me. And I turned around and there she was. I could see her.
Pretty steady high.
Yeah, I felt her kind of pulling on my coat a little bit. It's like they're moving. As we looked, all of Lloyd's meters were showing that the energy was quite high in this area.
Where you pick up a high magnetic reading seems to correlate to a spot where people are having an experience. You got to look at this as a possible what we call haunting, and that it is a memory in the environment, so to speak. It's like the environment records something that happened there 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
I think it's a good place to take a shot.
Occasionally Polaroid film, for whatever reason, seems to get some very unusual patterns on it during real high spikes of the magnetometer, and also sometimes when the psychics take a picture now, because they think they're picking up something.
If something's going to come out. And I feel that Brookdale Lodge has a great many of the ghosts who come and go.
Getting much higher. There's something out of the ordinary going on here in people's experience and in the environment based on our readings and based on what the people have picked up. And this is warranting a second visit for sure.
I have not seen anything that seems to me evidence of haunting or supernatural activity here. But I have seen a correlation between the people who don't believe in ghosts here, who therefore have never seen one, and those who do believe, who do experience ghosts. I sometimes make the conclusion that ghosts must be believed to be seen.
You know, I like to think that there's an explanation. I was seeing things or whatever, but I wasn't looking for anything, and I don't know, I just think that there's a lot of history here, and I think that there's a lot of good times we're here, and there's some souls that don't want to leave.
America's haunted houses occupy a deep place in our collective psyche. And even if ghosts don't exist, people want to believe in them.
If we have a belief in life after death, then the experience of an apparition or thinking one's seen an apparition can be interpreted as a departed soul.
I have been in houses where the noises and the manifestations with witnesses are so profound that one has to believe there are things that do go bump in the night that we cannot explain.
There really are no haunted houses or haunted restaurants or haunted inns, only haunted people. That's the great secret of hauntings, is it's in the mind.
I don't think any of us know really where we're going to go when we die. And I think sometimes you run into a place where you can just get a glimpse of that.
The roadways to America's haunted houses wind through the worlds of myth, science, and religion. For skeptics, ghosts and hauntings are merely attempts by believers to explain the unknown. But for most, the truth is a genuine mystery, as elusive as the ghosts themselves.